All right, welcome back to the Feisty Aphrodite with your host, me, Jessica, and my friend and colleague, Dr. Teralyn. Today
Hey.
is a great topic because we are talking about sexual wellness. Doesn't have to be about having a perfect body. So as we recover from the new year, many people have resolutions that are about their outward appearance. And a lot of people feel like they have to look a certain way or feel a certain way in their body when it comes to sex, whether that's because they want to try a new position. You know, so many people talk to me and they're worried about what they look like during sex. Nothing takes away from the experience more so than being worried about what you look like. Tell me, Teralyn, like, what are your thoughts on that topic?
Well, it's funny because there was this some videos going around on TikTok about this. And have you seen them? Like, this is what you look like. Put your phone
Oh,
here, and this is what you look like when you're on top, and things like that. And it's always like this horrible facial, like double chinned,
yeah,
all these things. And I'm like, well, that just kind of perpetuates the idea that you look like shit when you're on top. You know
right.
what I mean? I think, as someone who's bigger, I'm bigger. It comes into play, but it also comes into play when positions and things are, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being explored, because sometimes no matter what your body shape or size is, whether you are short or super tall or a little overweight or super skinny, like body image issues, and you're also going to have some like positions that just don't work for you.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we need to keep that in mind, because I think, we're promoting this idea that, make sure that you have lots of different positions, and that's the only way to keep sex fun. But
Right.
some positions just aren't enjoyable because of your body size,
Mm-hmm.
and or doable, frankly.
Right.
So but I mean, figuring out if it's enjoyable or doable is, don't just automatically assume that you can't, or your body can't do that.
Right.
It
Right.
kind of kind of reminds me of yoga a little bit, because yoga is promoted to be like the perfect size. You have to do these poses that aren't for
Mm-hmm.
every shape or size body, so it makes you feel bad when you can't get into that pose, right?
Right.
So I think yoga has a very body dysmorphic or whatever ideals around yoga and what it is, and so I think we can apply that into sex as well.
Yeah. Like my downward dog never looks like that downward dog of the video on, like, my legs aren't locking out like that and my body's not moving like that.
Right.
What's going on here? But it's funny you bring that up because really the Kama Sutra has a basis in, Indian culture, and so does yoga.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's
I
interesting
didn't
the
even think of
parallels
that.
there. Yeah, the parallels there. Um, so, I mean, of course, that's a old tradition where you weren't like thinking about how you looked or anything like that. It was more about, sexuality, spirituality combined. So, um, the way that the Kama Sutra was birthed wasn't like a boredom buster. It was more of the mix of sexuality and spirituality, and doing things different. But now we've turned it into
Sensuality overall, basically, like what is sensual.
right. Now we've turned it into like TikTok.
Gymnastics.
What do you look like?
Yeah.
When you're in this position. Who
Do you
cares?
really think people care what you look like
I
when
hope
you're
not, because then get out of my bedroom if you really care that much.
if you're so worried that my double chin is going to be in your face, then apparently I'm not the right person to be doing this with.
Right.
I mean, if your partner is judgmental and worried about your body shape or size, or not being able to do certain things or looking a certain way, then you might want to reconsider a few things, or think
Right.
about projection. I mean, maybe they're projecting all of their insecurities onto you,
Yeah.
in the bedroom. I don't know, but
Mm.
this got me thinking about, like, when in my sexual timeline did I start thinking about the way my body was shaped and moved and things like that? When did you start thinking about that?
Well, I've got to share that I probably started thinking about that right away because I recovered from an eating disorder by 17. So I've already had, um, a just a not healthy body image. But I had my first baby at 19, my second at 20. So guess what? That body didn't go back to like what a traditional 20-year-old body would be. So like my stomach has always been looser skin because I had a baby that I lost, and then I had my daughter Maria. So 2 pregnancies back to back like that. There just wasn't a way for my skin to recover. So for me personally, I have always struggled with the way that I look, and never felt like I got to experience it with kind of like that freedom that maybe one expects in their early adult life. Of course, I was living a very stressful life with a newborn and all that sort of stuff. So there wasn't, it was a breakup right after I brought my daughter home from the hospital. So to date, to adjust to a new body and to adjust to a new baby, that wasn't happening. Yeah.
Right. I was trying to think back, like for me, it probably started in high school with, and it's funny because I did see something that talked about like, if only you could go back to your old self and be like, girl, just rock that body,
right.
And, I found some old cheerleading pictures of myself and I thought, God, this was the time in my life that I was the most insecure about my body. I am less insecure about it now, being 52, having 2 kids, having larger amounts of mass on me than I ever have in my whole life. And here we had this 16-year-old that was worried about a little tummy roll, when she sat down.
Right.
Like everybody, when you sit down, has a little bit of a roll. It's the way our bodies are designed, And I remember looking at that picture thinking, girl, if only you would have embraced who you were then,
right.
Just as a person. But I remember some interactions with guys that were very, I was very self-conscious about, everything, my boob size, like all of it, everything came into play. And that had to be like 15, 16,
Oh, for sure. It's kind of like you look back on pictures of when you thought you were fat and you wish you were that fat that you thought you were fat. Like it's always like we're looking back at these old pictures, and that moment in time we were probably wishing we looked a different way, and now we look at it and we're like, I wish I was looking like I did then and I was happy. So in a lot of ways we're always looking back at our previous bodies, because bodies change throughout time, and we're wishing we were just happy in those moments, and we would be delighted to look like that in the here and now.
Delighted.
Yeah.
I would be delighted. That would be good. That would be like the icing on the cake. Well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, that girl back then like didn't have kids and things like that. So you automatically know your body likely won't be exactly the same way that it was before, no matter how good of shape you were in. I mean, pregnancy changes your body, but I mean, I look at my 30s and I think I really wish I would have spent my 30s embracing myself, but I didn't. I spent my 30s like despising my body, despising all of it, like working against it in ways, it's just a waste of time. So
right. Yeah. I grew up in a household that really put a lot of weight on what you looked like. So
did I.
Yeah. And so apparently I was not a very pleasant little girl, because I was bossy, messy Jessie. Hey, still am. But
what they called you?
Yes. But like my parents would say, you're not a very sweet little girl, so you better hope that your looks, stay. You better hope someone wants to marry you. So it was a lot of emphasis on the way I looked all throughout my entire life. So of course, I really, unfortunately, really, that was a foundation for me in a lot of ways, was what I looked like. So for me, I never looked good enough. Even even at 16, even, you know, and then at 20, to have gone through so many changes was really rough for me. So I think it has a huge impact on how you feel when it comes to the experience in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So I always say, you know, what are two things that people need in intimacy and sex? It's communication and confidence. And most people lack both.
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 They're not communicating about sex, and they're not confident, whether that's in the way they look, in the way they feel, in what they're doing. There's a lack of confidence that's there. So most people, it is about their body and worrying about that. And I will say, like, it doesn't just happen to women. I see men that don't feel confident in their size, in, you know, in all sorts of things, in the way they look, because
Because
Taylor.
men are supposed to look a certain way too, you know? And I think social media perpetuates that more with men today too. It didn't used to always be that way. It was always more of a female thing. And this conversation started, guys, if you had to look at the cover of January's edition of Cosmopolitan magazine, there's it looks like a yogi on there, and she's doing some yoga, and she's a little bit larger of a woman in our American standards. And it says, "This is healthy." And I think the idea here is to, you know, try to slash some of those ideas of what healthy really looks like and really is. And on TikTok, somebody had said something to me too, like, how can you promote a healthy mind when obviously you don't take care of yourself? Somebody said something in that general area. And
Mhm.
I was like, how do you don't have any idea of what I do
Right.
to try to promote my own health. And so I felt like this is a really good topic because there's a lot of body shaming externally,
Mhm.
which promotes internal body shaming, of course. So that little comment that guy made on my TikTok tape, it literally had me in a spiral for a couple of days.
Mhm.
Like, just like this person has no idea. And so then you go down the, you know, the shame spiral, like in your childhood, because I have struggled with weight my entire life, except from 8th grade to 12th grade, which is probably like eating disorder time for me as well.
Mhm.
But that was the time that, again, I didn't embrace anything about what she looked like or whatever, because she was still never good enough.
Mhm.
But I did too. Like, my family had a culture of dieting. I remember my mom was constantly on the new fad diet, constantly on the newest, fattiest diet that there could be. And there was one time that my sister was in a department store modeling type thing. My sister got in it. She was taller than I was, and she was always the thinner one um, of the two of us. And we're less than a year apart, so it's very competitive. But I remember my aunt came over and she looked at me and she said, "Well, you know, honey, they need all shapes and sizes of models for that." And I was like, oh, I felt like a dagger to my soul, you
Mhm.
know? And I'm like, so that those things, like, you're never going to be enough. Again, the same thing like
Right.
carries through, even when you are enough, even when, you know, when is enough, you know, and when is enough in the bedroom. Like, so I think there's more people that look like us than there are people that don't, to be honest. And I think there's more men that don't have six packs than men who do, you
Right.
know? And so, you know, in the bedroom, this comes to play because we have all these ideas about the ideals
Mhm.
around the perfect body type, you know? So the cover on Cosmo is a very interesting thing when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to body image. It's just an interesting thing because I know, like, that pendulum, they're trying to swing it in the other direction here, like so far away from the skinny supermodel ideal
Yeah.
to over here, like,
Mhm.
and people are really bent about it, to be honest. I mean, there's been a lot of commentary around it, like, how dare Cosmo promote this as being healthy? And I'm
Well,
like,
they've just moved from one standard to the other, and it really
yeah,
is about the external representing the internal. We can't say for sure that person is any more healthy than the extremely skinny person. I'm not their physician to know what their levels are and all sorts
right.
at Yahoo. But I think we've done the rubber band where we've gone from super skinny to, you know, embracing plus size. We're still missing like the middle point where most of Americans are sitting. You know, like that still isn't represented. And I think that that's been, you know, definitely something that I see in a lot of the comments of like, you know, you embrace this as the new standard, but you're still not, like, we're still calling a size, you know, 8, 10 plus size within those industries. So the industry still
love to be an 8 or a 10. I was just saying, like,
right, right. And the 8s and the 10s are like, we're, you know, like we're just, we don't think of ourselves as plus size. So,
right.
you know, like really, you know, they're still focusing on an external look validates your health. Well, I don't know that that person is healthy. And I don't know that the skinny person is healthy either or unhealthy. Like we're, you know, we've just created a different standard. And I think that that's definitely a major issue.
Well, I think of like, so my husband and I are like complete opposites. So I always say I'm short and round and he is tall and thin, you know? And so we are like, we're like that poem that perpetuates this Jack Sprat and his wife, you know, Jack Sprat could eat no fat and his wife could eat no lean, you know, like I feel like that's us. And I remember early in our marriage, he was even thinner. So he's okay, he's like 6'6", but he's like, no, I'm not. I'm like 6'4" or 6'5". I'm like, just own your 6'6". It's fine, you know. And I'm 5'3.5", right? So there's quite a size difference between the two of us. But I remember early in our marriage, he actually went to the doctor, and because he had disclosed to me that he was kind of tired of being shamed by people, like being called stretch, being called beanpole and whatever it is. But I remember stretch as being one of the things. Nobody would ever come up to me and say, hey, bowling ball, you know what I mean? Or whatever. They just, they don't outwardly do that. But to thin people, there's a commentary. People think it's okay to say that, which promotes body image issues. And then he went to the doctor to find out how he could gain weight. Right. And I'm like, okay, like you don't like your body, you want to try to do something. And the doctor's response, and this was years ago, the doctor's response was, consider yourself lucky. And I'm like, well, that's shitty.
Right.
You know, that's a crappy response. So, I mean, his body image is, I've come to realize like his body image is similar to mine, except we're on the opposite end of the spectrum here, you know? So
right. That's just like sex. Like we're often worried about our body and our partner's worried about their body. And like no one is going evaluating the other person and like, ooh, you know, you're like, you may need to work on that. No, like that's not what's going on in people's heads. But we often,
and if it is going on in people's heads, and that's not your people, you know, like seriously.
Right.
It's interesting because I wanted to get my mom into the swimming pool, you know, and when we were visiting her in Florida. And she said, oh no, I'm not going to put my swimsuit on. Everyone's going to judge me. Now, keep in mind, she's in her mid to upper 70s now.
Right.
And she's still worried about what people think about her body. And I said to her, I said, Mom, nobody is thinking about your body as harshly, or if at all, as you are. You know, keep that in mind, you guys. Nobody is thinking about your body on the beach. They're thinking about their own body on the beach. You know, they're thinking about making sure their swimsuit is covering places and or not covering places, or if they should wear that swimsuit or not, or if they should cover up or not.
Right.
And so I think in the bedroom, like as I'm tying this together, I'm like, you know, what do we do in the bedroom that we know we're shaming our own body? And things like keeping the lights off,
right,
pulling up a blanket all the time, wearing clothes, you know,
right.
I'm trying to think what else comes to your mind when you think about how we body shame ourselves in the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, like people are trying to find lingerie that's the most covering, or you take the panties off and that's it, so they still have their top covered.
Right.
You know, very strategic sort of stuff goes on. You know, whether that's a position that you choose, or you know, candlelight only so you can't see flaws, all this sort of stuff. You know, like you're losing the experience if you're thinking about all of that sort of shit. You're losing the spontaneity. If you've got a pre-plan in that way, you're probably losing your freaking orgasm. Because let's be honest, women, need probably about 20 minutes of stimulation, often non-penetration, and they need to have a stress-free brain. So they need to be mindfully aware of their pleasure in that moment in order for women to have an orgasm. Well, if you're worried about your body, your position, what you look like, what you smell like, all these sort of thoughts, you ain't hitting that O then, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when you talked about that, I'm thinking about like setting the stage in your bedroom. So like you be in control of that. So instead of just turning off the lights and making sure it's pitch black and diving under the sheets right away, like you be in control of how you want to set it up, because I think orgasm has a lot to do, like you said, with stress reduction, but
Mhm.
also setting the stage and foreplay. And foreplay just isn't your man's hands on your body or your
Right.
woman's hands on your body. The foreplay has to also do with the environment.
Mhm.
How do you want to set it up so you can actually feel more sensual,
Right.
with
Right.
lighting and mood. And so think about different senses that you have as well. So to enliven your senses, that might take the pressure off your body,
Mhm.
or, and I think you had said it on a TikTok once. So if you haven't, please follow both of us on TikTok while you're listening here. The mantra of I deserve pleasure.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
why don't we talk about that for 1 second?
Yeah, yeah. I think that we need to come into it a mindset of not like we're pleasing a partner, because I think that honestly, like there's a patriarchal view about sex. It's really about the male partner getting off, and like we're there as part of the experience, but there isn't so much an emphasis on female pleasure. So really, we have to kind of rewire our mindset and be willing to take our experience as being just as important, like plant that damn flag on the moon here. Like your pleasure is important. So it really is the mantra of I deserve pleasure, whatever those mantras look like or sound like. My body is beautiful, I deserve pleasure, sort of like creating this you know these I like to use hypnotic messaging, so it would be some of those same things that I would work with a client on. It's kind of rewiring some of those thought processes
Mhm.
where your pleasure is important. It's all about your experience, their experience, and then you're co-creating a good experience.
So the minute your mind goes off into worrying about your body or worrying about the dishes or the kids or whatever, like rework it, like bring a new awareness to your thought patterns and just say, I deserve pleasure, or I can have pleasure, or something like that. Just come up with a mantra that works for you around pleasure so you can kind of refocus yourself into the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're that worried about your body image, don't keep it a secret. This goes back to communication. Go ahead and communicate about that.
Mm-hmm.
If your body doesn't feel right in a certain position, just say, my body doesn't feel right. I don't feel sexual or sensual in that position.
Mm-hmm.
I would appreciate if you would stop asking me to do that right now. Like do what feels good and comfortable for you.
Or just be like, fuck right off, I'm not doing
Yeah, I'm not doing that,
I ain't fucking doing that.
Right, exactly. So this is that communication stuff. And again, I think we have a lot of messaging around positions and what's sexy and what's not. Like what's sexy and what's not is whatever you decide.
Right.
You as an individual, your partner doesn't get to decide this. You do for
Right.
yourself, each of you do, so.
Like I like that, if it's just about a position or something, you know use your voice, you're a part of it too. But honestly, if this is a huge area, um, that is impacting your life, and likely if it's coming out a lot within the bedroom, it's probably coming out a lot in other areas of your life, that you really deserve to work on that. Because on my TikTok I get tons of messages, from men that are like, my partner just doesn't want to have sex anymore because she doesn't like the way her body looks.
Mm.
if it's become so, pervasive within your life that you're turning down things that you could be enjoying, then I do think that it is something for you to work on, maybe on a deeper level. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. Like you're doing the hard work to change, this messaging that we women, and men now too, have had for years and years and years.
Yeah, so it's important. So reach out to us. We are on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. All of our contacts are in the show notes. And I think that's a wrap. Are we
That's
okay with wrapping?
a
All right, that's a wrap. All right,
wrap.
until next time on the Feisty Aphrodite. See y'all later. I'm Dr. Teralyn.
Bye, I'm Jess.